Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of It's Not You, It's Me podcast. I am your host, DS Choi, and this is the first time I am trying to do a video recording at the same time. This is a live recording. We'll see how this goes. So where do I begin? Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about a question that my friend asked as she is meeting someone new, and they've been talking on the phone. Maybe I should have asked her for permission to share this story, but I guess she's anonymous, so it could be anyone. You guys get the tea. Basically, she asked me, what is a question I should ask this person as I'm trying to get to know them to decide whether I want to be in a relationship with them? And that got me thinking, what would I really ask if there was only one question that I can ask? And this is contextual. Assuming that they've been in a relationship before, I would like to ask them, what was your previous relationship like? And I'm some people might think it's taboo. Excuse me. Some people might think it's taboo to talk about your exes and your previous relationships on a first date or something like that. This is not a first date, or I guess it could be a first in-person date, or I don't know. But you've been might have been texting over the phone. You might have had small talks here and there. But the reason I would like to ask this question about what was your previous relationship like? Oh, and I guess it's two questions in one. And how did it end? And maybe what did you learn? Right. It's like a question that's related to your experience. What was your experience like in your previous relationship? And one of the most telling things about people is how they talk about other people. Same thing whether it's gossip. If someone is gossiping a lot, gossiping about other people, you can probably bet that they're also gossiping about you when you're not around. And I forgot the cycle. Maybe I should do some more research on these things too. It's just popping up in my head as I'm yapping. There's a research done about how you kind of speak about other people is often a reflection of you, and it's very interesting because if you're talking bad about other people, that's also how it's related. It's associated. People associate that behavior with you, and so if you're venting all the time and talking crap about other people, for some reason psychologically, because you're the one bringing the content and topics and tea, people will associate that tea with you, and that you might be like that. And so, ideally, you would like to talk graciously about other people, and so and it's really important when someone, especially in a relationship where this is someone that you really liked, and you may have been hurt by, and so you're not in a good standing anymore with them. You might be upset, frustrated, and you want to lash out at them. You don't want to say good things about them. And so when someone's recalling about their past experience with them, what do they say? How do they recount that experience, recall it? Is it is it graceful or is it full of anger? Is it full of resentment? Ideally, you would want someone who is, we would say, perhaps a growth mindset. It's like, what are the things that they learned from that experience, more than the outcome or what they did. Sure, you can talk about what they did; it's very relevant. Um, but how did they make you realize what is important to you? And so, this is I guess, a more funny example. One of my past roommates, he wasn't very clean, and I remember um, when we moved out, he got for whatever reason, yeah, we'll keep it private. And so when they moved out, I felt a huge relief. And I would definitely say I lived alone before, and living alone is by far the most peaceful because why? It's your place. You do whatever you want. No one can say anything. It's very comfortable. It's homey. It's your place. And when you're living with people, you have to accommodate and you have to be considerate and treat people nicely and share space respectfully. And that's very important. I just remember realizing how much I've been tolerating, trying to be considerate, but at what cost? And I realized how had been avoiding certain conversations to not create any conflict. And this is not like a romantic relationship, but it's still a friendship. And with a housemate, roommate, there are relationships too, in a different way. Sometimes people say when you room with your best friend, you either become closer friends or leave worse enemies. And again, I don't think he's a bad person. We're friends. We didn't have any bad blood. Nothing was really bad. Um, and honestly, we if there was anything that we wanted the other party to do, we would accommodate. It wasn't a big deal. But it's also very clear that our lifestyle values were very different. Um, and I wanted the place to be cleaner than it was. And the struggle was I didn't want to clean after him because if he's the one who made it, because I live very clean. And so if he's the one who made it dirty, I would expect him to clean it. But for him, I've had this mentality too before. There's certain things I don't clean. Um, Maybe I'm going off tangent, but very, very, very quickly. I am very clean, but I don't like to dust. For whatever reason, I don't like to dust. But everything else, I relatively keep clean and orderly, especially if it's a shared space, whether it's the kitchen, the refrigerator, the bathroom, the sinks. I keep them all really clean so that the person behind me would feel better about using it. My roommate's not the same. He just my past roommate, and that was a struggle for me because I felt that I was putting in more effort to keep the place clean than he was. And but the nice thing, again, he's not a bad guy. If I requested that he clean certain things, he would. And if I asked him to do certain things a certain way, he would. Sure, it's not a habit, and there are things that I asked him to do that he would fail to do because it's not in his habit. And there was a part of me that didn't want to repeat what I said, and I felt so bad about that because I don't want to create conflict. And I that's something I've truly realized about myself in this experience. Um, this person I room with, I had only known him for about a year before rooming with them, and we met at church. And so, in general, like a decent person. He's not a bad guy. And so, it's just again our living style, lifestyle, preferences, and how we keep the home clean is different. And I think that is okay. I think it's a matter of how do we communicate that and work that out. And I realized I didn't communicate that strongly enough. And so, in this relationship, I had a lot of frustrations I realized I built up, a lot of things I had been tolerating. And so that's a good question. What have you been tolerating in your relationship that you haven't been communicating and it has been eating up some of your energy? And so I mean, I remember when he left and I talked about how dirty the place was as I was cleaning it. Now that he's gone, I've cleaned the place and it's a lot, it's tons cleaner than when he was here. And I was frustrated because I felt like I had to clean up after him. I was so I don't know if angry is the right word. I was definitely resentful, right? There's feelings of like, frustration. I'm cleaning up after him. It's so annoying. Like it's basically I'm cleaning up his mess. And I realize how important cleanliness is when I'm sharing space with someone. And I learned that I needed to be able to speak up about that. And I had done so, and I realized I needed to do more rather than sit with the discomfort, rather than uh, choose to be considerate, trying to be nice, right? Trying not to create any conflict. I needed to choose to listen to my frustrations, listen to my resentments, and be able to communicate that with them more firmly. Um, I don't want to say confrontationally, but I needed to confront him about these things in a non-aggressive manner. It's like, hey, like I would like to keep this clean. I'm gonna clean it up now. And I would when you I would if it becomes dirtier than how I cleaned it, I would like for you to maintain it to be clean. And so there's a lot of details I can go into of what happened and why I didn't clean certain things, but we'll leave it at that. And so that was something I truly learned from this past roommate. And I think it's a very important lesson for me for um, my future relationship with my current girlfriend, right? Like how I talk about certain discomforts. What have I been tolerating? So actually, after that experience, I remember asking my girlfriend, I was just like, is there anything in this relationship that you've been tolerating that you haven't shared yet or haven't felt comfortable? Uh, uh, like you didn't want to be confrontational. And she was like, no. So, I mean, I'm glad, but maybe there is. Uh, and I want to give space for that to occur. So now, rewinding back to the first question conversations that I had with my friend who's meeting someone to date, the question that I believe she should ask that person is, yeah, what was your relationship with your ex, your previous relationships? What did you learn? What did you grow? What are the experience? And depending on how they respond, tells you a lot about that person's maturity and how they're thinking about growth, how they think about people and their experiences. Because again, no one gets married because they want to divorce. No one expects to fall in love and bitterly fight in divorce proceedings, right? Like no one. That's not what's expected. And so you really want to care for people, and you want to show them compassion. That we're all humans, we're all people. We have our issues, we have our vices, we have our sins, we have our habits and preferences, and we're so different. So, one of the things that you want to be on the same page, however, is your growth in your relationships. That each person that you meet, hopefully, hopefully, you have learned more about yourself than about them, right? Like you have learned more about who you are and what kind of person you want to be in your relationships. So, for another example is in my very first relationship, I realized how anxious I was. It was a long distance, and I've only done long distance. And so I'm in the U.S. She was in Canada, and it was during COVID, and I wasn't. I have more. I lean towards an anxious attachment style, while she definitely leans um, from my uh, non-professional diagnosis. I don't diagnose people, by the way. Um, what I realized her behaviors were was very disorganized. She had disorganized attachment or fearful avoidant, and it was definitely more of her avoidance side. Um, she was not comfortable confronting me with anything. Uh, Many times where she just disappeared. It's like ghosting for a few days. But it's not. It was interesting because it's not just me. Her friends. When I asked where her friend, I would ask her friends like, "Do you know where she is?" They'd be like, "No, I haven't heard from her. She's not responding to me," and that was her natural behavior. And I got so anxious, and I learned how much I tried to make that relationship work at the expense of myself. And I definitely learned there were behaviors that I'm not. I don't. It's not necessarily I'm not proud of. I'm. It's one of those things where like, oh, I could have done this better. I could have done this another way. I could have spoken more gently, and be more considerate. And at the same time, I could have been a little bit more firm, right? I could have been more willing to let go of the relationship than to make it work. Not because I didn't like her, but because when you're with someone and you're trying to build a relationship, it has to be a dynamic between two people. And when one person disappears, it's very difficult to work with that person. If someone's not responding to you and they're not communicating well, it becomes very hard to build a relationship. And so I remember learning to myself, I don't want in my future relationships to do so much work if they're not reciprocating. And I'm not saying they're not doing any work. I'm very sure, and I could very vouch that she was trying certain things in her own way. And I can definitely also say she was struggling a lot with her mental health. And that was during COVID. It was hard. And I hope she is doing well. We don't talk. Um, I learned so much about myself in this relationship. And I could say so much bad things about how she behaved and how frustrated I was and all these things. But that doesn't really matter, right? Because you can't control people. The only person you can control is yourself, and you can only learn uh, in a relationship, especially one that didn't work out, is who do you want to be with? Who is someone yeah, what kind of person do you want to be around? What kind of person do you want to work things out with? Because if you're doing all the work, then it's not going to work, right? It takes two. Ooh, maybe another thing that comes to mind is something I've learned is there is, if you're familiar with the anxious attachment and avoidant attachment and how those couples and how they interact and what the dynamic is, there's this thing known as the anxious avoidant trap. And that's when someone pulls away, the avoidant pulls away, and the anxious, wanting more connection, chases after the avoidant. That's a dynamic. I full caught red-handed. I have contributed to that dynamic, and I didn't know about it before. And I learned about it in post, and I was just like, oh, I learned so much about myself through that dynamic, and how I had been contributing to that. Like I was making it worse by chasing after her with my anxious attachment. And so learning about how to deal with that, how to manage that, just being self-aware is a big part of it. And being and recognizing, oh, I'm having those feelings as I'm chasing after her. And so it's very interesting because I'm not a very I'm a very in MBTI, I'm a very strong T. Or at least I think I used to be. But I would like to think I'm a lot more logical. Um, and I don't really let my feelings get the best of me. But in a relationship, what happens? It's a feeling based. It's an often feel a very highly feeling oriented experience, right? That's what our relationships are like because we like someone. That's an emotion. We are attached to someone. That has to do with a lot of feelings and emotions from our childhood and our relationship with our parents. A lot of things, right? It's very complicated. And so again, I learned so much. And so as you're even hearing me talk about my past experience with my ex, uh, I am really focused on what can I learn from this so that my next relationship will be better. And oftentimes that's the best. Uh, you can only be thankful for that experience, despite how hard it could be. Now it's a hard relationship, and so, uh, but so for my friend, if she's going on this date with this person and want to ask that question, but let's say that person has never been in a relationship before, or maybe they don't consider it a long-term relationship enough in which they really learned. But I would definitely say there's so much you can learn even in a short-term relationship. But let's say they have zero experience, then what can you ask? Um, for me, these are my values. And so I don't think everyone should necessarily want to ask this question or care. But for me, I think it's really important. I would ask, what are your thoughts about couples therapy, couples counseling, couples coaching, whatever it may be? What do you think about finding professional help to make a relationship work and succeed? And see how they respond because uh, I want to understand also, similar with the growth mindset, that, and I keep using this phrase growth. Oh, I don't know if I keep using it, but it's the second time I brought it up. Growth mindset is a research term, very simply, how it's a study on kids by Carol Dweck from Stanford about performance versus like a performance mindset versus a growth mindset, where when students are focused on effort, like growing from, like failures are not an issue, right? It's you grow from putting in the effort, putting in the time, not so worried about the outcome. It's just like if I try, I will do better. Even if I'm not good at it now, It's like I'm not good at it yet, right? Like I'm not good at this yet. And this idea of effort and putting in effort to make things, to try things, and um, not be afraid that it's not perfect. And I have both. Everyone has both, right? Everyone has a growth mindset and a performance mindset. I think that, for example, the reason why this podcast took so long to even start in my life is because I had a performance mindset. I was like, oh, what if it's not good enough? It's not up to my standards. That's a performance mindset, and so that has held me back. And growth mindset shows that and the research on growth mindset shows how um, people are much people with a growth mindset are able to handle setbacks and challenges much better than the people who are focused on performance mindset, because there's less anxiety, right? There's less concern about how you look and more about personal growth. And so that's basically growth mindset in a very small nutshell. I don't know if I even did it justice explaining it. Um, and so this question about what do you think? Are you open to couples counseling, coaching, therapy, to make our relationship succeed? What is that? What am I trying to get at with that question? Is how much are you willing to grow? How much willing are you to listen to a professional opinion? Um, how much ego do you have? How much pride do you have? If in case things don't go well, who are you willing to listen to? Who are you willing to consult and get help from? Because I know a lot of people, especially people who have gone through a lot of stuff, maybe, uh, yeah, I'll say trauma, childhood abuse, whatever it may be, or childhood struggles, or just even adult struggles with betrayals, with cheating and lying, whatever it may be, some traumas that you've dealt with, it becomes very hard to trust people, and it becomes very hard to ask for help. And so I can understand the resistance to it. And are you willing to seek professional help if I won't even say if, it's when our relationship struggles. Because that's so important to me personally, because I know that I can get all up in my head. I have my own issues. And if I find myself that I am hurting the relationship because of my past traumas, I want to work through that. I want to grow from that and heal. And so I would want my partner to. So this is an important value for me. This is why I want my partner, if I'm interested in being in a relationship with them, I want them to share that value. That's one of the strong values that I would love to share, right? But it's not. I would hope for the viewers and the listeners that you would share that same kind of value. I think it's a very important value to have for successful relationships. And that's one amongst many. I can go, maybe I'll talk about that in another podcast one day. This is the concept of what values, what kind of questions you should ask. But this is a very, I'm just recounting my experience with my friend as she was asking. And so, um, if I were able, so wrapping that up very quickly, uh, how open are you in seeking professional support? Because there's a lot of that comes. Some other thoughts come to mind where some people are very. It's part of pride, part of shame, part of ego, where people are ashamed when you share your problems, your relationship problems, with somebody else. And I can understand that too, right? It's because there's two sides to every story, and I'm not saying that every story. Um, I don't know what is the phrase that I want to use. Like, if we were to assign a proportion of blame, some people will be worth a higher percentage of blame sometimes. Sometimes it will be equal, sometimes it will be uneven. And so I can understand from a standpoint when you're sharing your story with your friends, you're typically painting your partner as the villain and makes them look bad when perhaps they're not. Some people, we throw this word around gaslighting a lot. Uh, I'm laughing because I use that term. I use that term in board games, and people used to tell me that I'm gaslighting them in board games. That's a different topic too. Gaslighting has become a very common term that I feel like people don't understand the proper use of it, but everyone kind of know what that means. It's basically trying to twist people's words and stories to make them feel like they're crazy, right, or like they're lying, or it's not the full truth, whatever it may be. And when you tell your friends your stories about your relationship struggles, often you're considered the innocent one, right? And you're complaining to your friends. Your friends not all of them, often will take your side because they're trying to support you, right? Um, the best friends, I don't know if best friends is the right way to put it. The friends that you want are the ones who can maintain objectivity because they're not involved, right? And they can still support you. They could be like, I hear what you're saying. Uh, that sounds like it's a hard time. And I'm also curious what your partner's story is and what they're going through, how they see it, because it's not the full picture, right? You want those kind of people around you in your life to help support you in your relationships. And so, based on how some people respond, and especially some cliques and some friend groups, and how they show support, I can completely understand how people don't want relationship issues to be shared with third party. And I don't know if third party is the right way to describe it, but with family and friends that aren't necessarily involved. And so oftentimes a lot of people will want to just between the two people, they want to figure out their issues. And again, I completely understand that. And I want to also see how open they are to seek professional support. It's not like your friends, and I would often say even because I come from a religious background, I would often say that even religious leaders are well-meaning, well-intentioned, and untrained. I I've I have met people in um, my churches where they have they have like career training in counseling or therapy, yes, but surprisingly my religious leaders, well, maybe not surprisingly, I don't think, like, they might have some idea, but they're not formally trained, and often these are the people we seek support from, and they will have, unfortunately, a bias that's not um, because they weren't formally trained. They don't know how to support you in the way that you actually need. And so that's also kind of like why, for me, I would also, anyway, I'm sidetracking. I was going to say, I kind of want to be that kind of support system in a religious organization in which people find support from an actual professional versus religious leaders. Now, I would hope that seeking professional support, they are trained, and hopefully they're trained well. Not all, not all therapists, counselors, coaches are created equal. And so find the good fit for you, someone who makes you feel safe and open and can hold your vulnerability in that space for you. I would also say um, they have to maintain confidentiality, right? That's part of the professionality. And so I hope that people who are resistant will realize that these professionals aren't sharing this with anyone um, to ruin your life. Uh, they will probably only share your situation anonymously, probably with their supervisor or people, their own support group, to try to figure out how to support your relationship. And so, again, if they're resistant to seeking such professional support, to me, that's a concern. Um, I would use that as a red flag, as something, red flag not meaning like you run away from them or a full stop on the relationship, but red flag meaning we absolutely must talk about that and figure out if we're a good fit for each other based on our values, how we're going to navigate that red flag, because it's an important value to me. And so, um, and I would love to share that with my partner. And if you don't share the same value, I have to choose whether to stay or leave. And I think perfectly fine, right? You state your desire and see how they respond. And if it doesn't match, completely okay, right? Uh, Maybe hard to leave, completely understandable, but for your own future safety, for your own future safety, you want that to be aligned. You want that value to be aligned. So so if they've never been in a relationship, I would ask that question. And if you had more than one question, that's something I would definitely ask if I'm on a date with someone. Now, another one came up because it came from one, and then after that one question, remember I said that, oh, what if they weren't in a relationship? Then I came out the second one, and then it became, if you could ask three questions, what would it be? The third one is, uh, it's a big question, and sometimes it has to do with a lot of follow up questions you would have to ask. But yeah, what is their relationship with their parents? How did they fight? Uh, yeah, so maybe I'm cheating. It's like multiple questions in one, but again, the idea is what is their interactions with people they love, people they consider to be their caretakers, and how did they observe their relationship with fighting, right? Because for example, some relationships, some parents, they don't want their kids to see fighting at all, and so they never fight. And what happens when what happens? What do they learn when that happens? Is when they grow up, they realize fighting means bad because their parents never fought. And so to them, their parents are an example of a good relationship. And so if they fight, then something is bad about this relationship. And that's an understandable conclusion to have. And clearly, it's not true. It's not a complete. It might not be a good relationship. You don't know, right? And so the concept of how to fight well, and some households they fight all the time, right? And so they want a relationship where they never fight. So that's the opposite end of the spectrum, and they struggle when they fight because they're just like, if we're fighting, that means it's like I never want to be in a relationship. I don't want to repeat the relationship that my parents have had when they fight all the time. And so, and obviously, your relationship with your parents and all these things are related to attachment. So it just gives you an idea of what that person's like, especially how they fight. Um, and so, something I joke around with my girlfriend right now is we need to kind of fight. Like we need to see how when we argue about something, when we have a clash of preferences, I would say. We kind of because I say preferences over values because we've talked so much about our values, and so I said preferences because yeah, we may have strong preferences. And for example, I have a strong preference, or I would say value. Maybe live having spent time with my girlfriend, living like in the shared space together for a few days or a week or whatever, some time period. I've been at her place, she's been at my place, and one thing I'm so thankful for after experiencing with my past roommate is uh, uh, how clean she is, and she knows how clean I am. And right now, to the degree that we've experienced our lives together, it matches, and I love it. It's so nice. It's less of a headache for me. And let me tell you, household chores is one of the top 5 reasons people divorce, right? The division of labor. And so it's an important thing to talk about, and an important thing to experience. And so one thing I want to experience also is actually having a genuine argument where we might feel heated. I don't know when that's gonna happen. I would love to experience that. I want to. Uh, so for example, we talked about going on a short road trip together somewhere. The next time I visit her, and and the reason why is because when you're traveling in uncertainty, perhaps a stressful situation, you're more likely to fight. Uh, we'll see how it goes. I think that's an important experience to have. Um, so that's what's coming to my mind. But yeah, what's your relationship with your parents? How did they fight? How did you fight? Like with them? Did you fight with them? Did they fight? What was exemplified for you in terms of their behaviors? Um, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people have bad role models. Um, and that's not because they're bad people. Is I think a lot of people don't have the support they needed emotionally, and they didn't really learn it from anybody. And so, for me personally, if I could create a relationship school, I would love to do that. Give people a real experience how to navigate their emotions, their relationships in a way that they hadn't learned before because no one taught them. That includes just expressing yourself. I think a lot of people struggle with being honest and truthful with their feelings and what they're feeling because they're afraid of the repercussions. It's a learned behavior that's fully understandable. Because if you spoke up before, you might have been shot down. Um, some experience I hear about from a lot of men is that they open up to their partner, um, and afterwards, their partner doesn't look at them the same. Like they treat them like they're weak, and that's extremely hurtful. Where in this patriarchal society, men are supposed to be strong, and they can't be vulnerable. And then when I see that as courage, right, and bravery when they are able to be vulnerable and open up to their partner about the things that they need and things that they're struggling with, and their partner didn't support them. That's so sad, right? And I think some people don't know what to do uh, with that kind of emotions. Sometimes, I mean, let's say it's not even in a romantic relationship. Sometimes with your friends, when they're asking you for support for something serious, you might find yourself overwhelmed by their emotions. You might be like, "Oh no, like I don't know what to say. I don't want to make it worse. I don't want to hurt them. This is too much responsibility for me." And so you might reject a friend from. You might. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. You might refuse supporting a friend. No, not refuse. You may avoid. That might be a better word. You might be avoiding supporting friends because you don't know how to deal with that yourself. You don't know how to deal with their. You don't know how to hold space for them. And so this is a skill that I think is so important for relationship building that people struggle to do. And uh, if it's a learned behavior that has happened multiple times over your lifespan, no one has taught you, and you haven't really had a chance to learn in a safe place because emotional weight is a real thing, and you don't want to do any emotional harm. And so you might not have had a safe place to develop these skills. And so I would love to create. I don't know if it's a workshop, but I would love to create some experiences for people where they can learn to support one another, hold space. What does that mean? What does that look like? And become more aware of their feelings. And so that's hopefully what I would do through coaching, right? Coaching is experience for sure, where like therapy, not the same. Trained professionals are able to hold that space for you, where you can observe your own feelings, your thoughts, and not let that consume you. Give you a space to explore what you're experiencing and recognize, even so, for example, for myself, recognize how frustrated I was in my previous with my roommates in terms of keeping the space clean, and frustrated with myself for not being able to speak up. Disappointed that, oh, like I'm a coach, relationship coach, I should be able to communicate all these things, being able to explore all those emotions and recognize, I'm learning, I'm growing myself, and I'm getting and I shared that with my mentor coach, and she was the one who held space for me to help me move forward in terms of being the relationship coach that I want to be, in which someone who can communicate, right, support people to communicate what their needs are, what they're struggling with, to their partner who they care about, people they care about, in a way that is again not aggressive, but something that's important to you. And I think that's such an important skill to communicate what's important to you. And so all right, so it's been about 40 minutes. Wrapping this all up, um, if anything, for my friend who's going on that date to figure out whether they want to explore a future with them, or whatever it may be, it's very early stages. Is you want to get an idea of who they are, uh, but more than who they are, you're able to communicate what's important to you. And so by asking certain questions, it's an example of what's important to you. If you talk about, are you open to couples counseling, therapy, coaching, they are expressing that this is something I value. And so I want to hear your thoughts about that. And so similarly, it could be as easy as, oh, like what is your values on cleanliness? Keeping things clean. It could be a lot laundry, whatever it may be. These questions and how you ask them is a reflection of your values, and you want to be able to communicate those things because you want to uphold things that are important to you. You want to be able to, what is it called? Express what's important to you and see how your partner responds in a way that to see whether they're supportive or not, and that helps you decide um, whether you want to be with them for the rest of your life. It's a very important decision. And if there are mismatches, how, because you can figure out. So I think I use food examples all the time. So we'll end with this. If someone is allergic to seafood, because you care for them, even though I'm not allergic to seafood, I'm gonna compromise, right? Like we won't. If there is a seafood place, we will make sure that there's alternatives that my partner will enjoy. And that's what we do, right? This is how we problem solve. It's just like there are certain things that are much more difficult and complex to problem solve, but there are certain things that we can adjust to the partner because we care and love for them, and we change and we grow to make them feel loved, right? And so this is such an interesting thing. I don't even know if I like the lighting and all that stuff, but part of me, I didn't want to do a live recording because I don't know, my face, I might look tired. My background, this is my bedroom. It's part of it's because I have a computer setup and everything, and I'm like, do I really want to move my mic somewhere else? I have like this mic arm. I have an old one that's busted over here. You can't really see it. Can't even see it. It's off screen. Man, so there's so many things I want to do and want to try. Like I want to start. Well, actually, I have, but I haven't been working on it. I have a new Instagram account, I guess is what you call it. And I would like to post more short content on there. I don't even know if it will be that short though. But planning that, sketching that. There's a lot of things I want to do. And we start with the one I'm familiar with. I haven't recorded a podcast in a bit. I've been a little occupied. My girlfriend was visiting me from out of state, and I also was sick, and I'm still kind of recovering from a sickness. And so bear with me as I try to do this episode. I don't even know really where to look because if I'm looking at the screen here, it's not exactly centered. I think the camera's over here, so maybe I should look right. Oh, it's right. It's you. It's you. Okay, I see you. I think it's that one. If you can see my eye contact, hopefully this would be more personable. Perhaps you could match a face to the voice and the yapping. All the yapping. Who's doing all that yapping? This is the end of this episode. Thank you for watching, and hopefully, maybe I'll do more. More of these video ones. I might not look beautiful all the time, but bear with me. I'm actually pretty handsome though. So, with that, signing out. Thank you for joining me. Hope to see you next time. Bye bye.